Hi guys, Ron here and welcome to the workshop. Today I've just done my first cyclocross race of this season, and due to the unnaturally dry conditions I had to use my MV 4.5 SES AR disc wheel set, which is a tubeless clincher wheel set, instead of my super specialized MVCX tubular wheel set that I was planning to use for this season, because well, this has some challenge baby limos tubulars on it, and yeah, it just wasn't a very good match with today's conditions. So that just got me thinking, last season I wasn't planning to use tubulars at all because I had two tubeless zip wheel sets which performed well, although I wasn't really up there in the results. I started to get into the top 10s by the end of the season. So I was really curious if going tubular would really help me get some better results, help me get some better grip and better control of the bike. So after doing some training rides in very deep mud, very slippery mud, on the tubulars, and then comparing it to the clinchers, I have to say it's not really a night and day difference. I think the biggest difference in my progress was the simple fact that now I have my own cyclocross course where I can train as much as I want, and that really showed in the results. Today I got fourth in the elite category, despite being caught up in some first turn carnage and being outside the top 20 in the first lap. So I think compared to last year I've progressed a whole lot, and to be honest, I don't really think it's about the tires in this regard. If you have a very good tubeless setup, then yeah, it's not the ultimate, I would say, for cyclocross, but it works very, very well indeed. If you choose the right tires and have the right tire rim combination, where you can run, or safely run, should I say, very low pressures, have a nice wide rim, also perhaps a compliant wheel build, then I don't see that you're going to run into problems anywhere. So yeah, for this setup, it works just fine. I've used 22 psi in front, 25 in the rear, and although I have to say, people say that you can run lower pressures in the tubulars compared to the tubeless. I know that's not necessarily true. In a tubular, sometimes you have to run a little bit of a higher pressure because it's a very supple tire, so they're not the same stiffness at the same pressure. That's what I'm trying to say here, because a tubeless tire is going to have a much thicker sidewall and it's going to have a much stronger construction. So you can't really directly compare the stiffness on the tire based on the pressure. The other thing is, if you adjust your tubular tire pressure, they have latex tubes in there, so they lose pressure in a couple of hours, or a little bit of pressure in a couple of hours, but not really during the race. Whereas with a tubeless setup, even if it's holding securely, you still get those sort of micro air losses, or at least in my experience, if your tire pressures are low enough to be actually useful for cross. So I would think that now, as you can see, my tire is pretty soft. It was getting softer during the race, although it didn't come off. So I think I've lost around 2 to 3 psi front and rear just from those those moments when you're really loading up the tire in in the corners. I can't really see any burping around there, so I have a type of sealant that's very liquid, but there's just none of it around the circumference of either rim. So it's really minor, but you have to keep in mind the fact that eventually you're going to lose a few psi of pressure. So it helps to know that you need to start off with something a bit more. A couple of days ago, I've experimented with really how low can you go with these tubular stars, and I went actually so low they were almost unrideable, but they still didn't come off or burp completely or just unhook from the bead. So if you have a good tubeless setup, that's how it should work. Of course, the glue takes care of that in a tubular, so even if you're on a flat tire or a nearly flat tire, you can still ride it, but it's not really worth it, in most situations, because you get so much tire roll that you can't really control the bike anymore. Then talking about lower pressures, another thing I would like to point out is the fact that both of these stars react quite differently to bumps, even when they are set up at roughly the same stiffness. And that's the only noticeable downside that I feel from the tubeless star. And you can definitely feel a sort of, like bounciness in the tire when you're going over some rough stuff or some roots or just, tiny imperfections in the trail. The tire, even when it's on feel, it's as stiff as the tubular. They have the same stiffness. You definitely get a lot more bounciness from the tubeless tire. I don't really know what is that caused by. Perhaps the stronger sidewall, and at first it can be a bit disconcerting, but if you get used to it, it's not a major issue. I don't think that it really cuts into your lap times anyway, although in certain situations it's definitely, a tubular gives a more planted feel in this regard. Also, when bottoming out the tire slightly, if your tire pressure is alright, you're probably going to feel the rim almost hitting the ground on those faster sections. So again, because of the bounciness of the tubeless star setup, it's going to feel a little bit more unpleasant and unnerving, whereas you don't really get influenced by that in a tubular setup. So these are my takeaways from my first race and a couple of training rides using both setups. I will have one more tubular tire and wheel combo in the works for the rest of the season. Hopefully that they arrive soon. And perhaps even another complete bike if all goes well. So we're definitely getting in cross now. If you want to know more about my cross bike setup, the complete build, or perhaps some of my other bikes, then don't forget to tune into the channel and subscribe. It's all for today. Thanks for watching and see you next time.